Welcome to Celebrating Our Food and Telling Stories of It. I am Sophie, your host and producer, and this is Our Food Stories, the podcast for us and by us. Episode 13. Welcome back to the second and last part of the Omugoyo series. In this episode, Mark continues from where he stopped, and then special guest Jonathan Kabugo and his mom continue by sharing their story as well. In this story, Jonathan directly translates what his mother is saying. So she will be speaking in Luganda, and he will translate what she is saying in English. If you can understand Luganda, then this will be a treat to listen to. But if you cannot, trust that Jonathan has translated the story really well, and you're going to learn something new from this story as well. Enjoy.
So, if you want to prepare omugoyo, you'll have to boil your beans until they're soft. Of course, you'll have to add some salt and also boil your potatoes. You can add your sweet potatoes to the boiling beans if you want, or you can prepare them separately. And when they're ready, you can smash them together. And then you'll form this big heap of omugoyo. And you will have to wrap it in a banana leaf and tie with banana fibers. Wrap it very well, the way you wrap a Christmas gift. Put it in a saucepan, and in the saucepan, before you put it, you could add another banana leaf at the bottom, which will help to regulate the heat as you wait to eat it later in the day. So usually, if you're preparing it in the evening, you would go through the entire process, put the banana leaves, wrap it, and then leave it on a ziko, which is a fireplace. We call it ziko or a choto, something like that. It has minimal heat just to keep the food warm, not to burn it. Or because the food is already ready for eating, this heat is just for the food to be preserved. And the juice or the moisture in the banana leaves would keep the mugoyo fresh. So usually they would leave it on the choto or on the sigiri. Sigiri is a cooking stove. They would leave it on the sigiri for overnight, and then in the morning you would open it and wrap it, and then you would be hit with that aroma of the smoked banana leaves with this delicacy, and you would enjoy it with black tea for breakfast. My aunt also told me that when they were going to the gardens, when they were younger, they would go to the garden and they would wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning to go to the garden, and they would wrap these portions of these omugoyo into small pieces of banana leaves, and they would take it as their snack to the garden. So they would feast on that while doing the garden work in order not to feel hungry the entire day. So this food would push them until they had to come back home. But then they would come back home and they were not so hungry. So this omugoyo is also vital in that sense to them, as they were growing up as kids. It's something that really bailed them out when it came, because it's easy to carry, it's easy to preserve. It is a combination of sweet potatoes and beans. So that's a whole meal actually, but in a very simplified form and also nutritious.
My name is Jonathan Kabugo. I'm the author of Put That Grew Us, a showcase of Ugandan cuisine. And I'm a big fan of A Kitchen in Uganda, the mother blog that Sophie has been doing for quite some time. And I'm happy to contribute to the new podcast. I'm passionate about food, and I've been following the trend locally and how it's evolving with external influences from the Middle East, from the Swahili coast, and influences here and there. So when she made a call for contributors to the podcast, my mind went straight to my favorite food growing up, and that was Omugoyo that my mom used to make, which was sweet potatoes and beans, a mash of the two, yeah? And it was an absolute favorite because you could have it hot for lunch and then have it for dinner a little cold and then have it the next morning again. So it was like a chunk of mash that could stay edible for quite a long time. And I think the novelty of it was the fact that it was there in some of the toughest moments of the family. And growing up, basically, it was some of the sweetest food you knew. So, yes, for the contribution, I asked Sophie to have me and then also have my mom's take on the subject. So I spoke to the Mother Supreme and she was happy to contribute. And yeah, she shared a few insights on how it's made and how it's been a part of her life growing up and the nitty-gritties. It was really sweet, actually. And so here goes.
Omugoyo gwatuyambanga mu kkula kwaffe era gukyatuyamba kubanga omugoyo abeera lumonde n'ebijanjaalo. Ebijanjaalo zenva ndowooza buli omu z'alina okulya olw'ekiriisa ekibirimu. So omugoyo gulinga bijanjaalo ne lumonde ng'obifumbye wamu n'obisotta. Kubanga y'emmere bulijjo gye tulya etuyamba okkula okusinga ebijanjaalo.
What it meant to her growing up and as a meal that we inherited. So the benefits of the beans combined with the carbs from the potatoes, it's energy giving, it's enriching, it's super healthy, and the fact that it's not fried, it's boiled and then mixed together. There are no additives. Actually, mugoyo doesn't even require salt. It's sweet potatoes because they're sweet and beans in whatever form they're in and mashed together. So it's very, very healthy and very organic. And the fact that the beans were freshly picked, the sweet potatoes were fresh out of the garden the previous day. So it was a very healthy meal, unlike anything we have today, because food takes quite a while to get to the markets now. But she says growing up, the food came straight from the gardens to your plate. So it was as fresh as can be.
Omugoyo natandika ogulaba nga bagufumba nga ndi mwana muto n'okugulya. Nali mwana muto, nali mu myaka gyange 10 egy'obuto. So maze ebbanga nga mmanyi omugoyo, nga mmanyi ogufumba, nga nguwoomerwa n'ogulya. Twali nga bato ng'omugoyo gutuwoomera ng'era bwe bagufumba musanyuka ne mwesunga nga mulaba bagufumba. Paka leero era omugoyo gumpoomera nga ngusobola kati ogwefumbira, manyi ogufumba ne gumpoomera ne guwoomera n'abalala.
When I asked her about her earliest memory of either the preparation or tasting mugoyo, my mom grew up in Bunido in Iganga district. She's a Musoga. She said she doesn't have an exact time period, but from her memory, she would guess it was around maybe 10. That's her earliest memory of having ever seen mugoyo being prepared or eating it. And she says they were always excited to see it. But I think what you may need to understand for a bit of context here is that in Busoga, in the 70s, 80s, they grew a lot of sweet potatoes and beans. This was like the basic food. It was, so every homestead had like a garden. They didn't grow a lot of matoke, but they grew sweet potatoes, they grew cassava, they grew beans, they grew G-nuts. Yes, they grew a lot of G-nuts and something else called mpande. It's not the case anymore, but yeah. So that sort of gives you a background of how mugoyo was so dear to Eastern Ugandans and how my mom came to encounter it at such a young age, growing up with her grandparents in Busoga.
Omugoyo nze bwe mba ngenda okugufumba ntegeka empande oba kye twayisa ebigaaga mu Luganda oba ebijanjaalo n'otegeka ne lumonde. Kati omala osooka n'ofumba ebijanjaalo ne bijja bulungi nga bulijjo bwe tubifumba. Bwe bijja bulungi n'ofuna lumonde gwe wategese okufumba. Kisinziira ku bantu bameka, nnamba y'abantu gy'olina gy'ogenda okutegekera, n'owaata lumonde wo n'omwoza bulungi. Lumonde oyo tetufumba mulamba. Ofumba omulamba ayinza okubiririrako oba alwawo n'okujja. Omutemaatema mu pieces n'omu bimunaaza bulungi, bwe tuba tugenda okufumba omugoyo tosooka bijanjaalo mu sseppiki nga byamaze okujja, basooka lumonde. Bw'osookamu lumonde awo oba ogenda kufuna omugoyo omulungi. Bw'osookamu ebijanjaalo biyinza okukusiriirako oba okubiririra, so basookamu lumonde n'oyiwako ebijanjaalo. Omala okuyiwako ebijanjaalo n'oteekamu otunnyo tutono, oba oluusi guli gw'otadde mu bijanjaalo bw'oba okozesezza supu w'ebijanjaalo guba gukola. N'oteeka ku kyoto nga bulijjo n'ofumba. Tofumbira bbanga ddene. Bw'okebera lumonde oyo ng'ayidde, amazzi ne bwe gabeera gakyalimu, ottululamu amazzi ago. Kati ng'omaze okuttululamu amazzi, otandika okugugoya, ogusotta paka lumonde bw'agonda. Naggwaamu lumonde n'efuuka mixture. Nze bwentyo bwe nfumba. Kaakati bw'omala okumugoya n'olaba nga temusigadde kalumonde konna, ng'ojjulira abantu bo gwe mugoyo. Si emmere eri awo nti ekaluubiriza. Ate naakola bwe ntya, olumala ogifumba ng'omala okusotta ng'osaavinga ng'abantu balya. Nze bwentyo bwe ngufumba.
We talked about how she prepared hers. I had bits and pieces from my memories growing up, but she went into detail explaining how she prepared hers. So she says you prepare beans the usual way. You boil them in water with a little salt, and then you prepare the sweet potatoes. So you peel them, wash them, and then dice them. She was insistent that you don't cook the sweet potato whole because it takes long to prepare and it also gets mushy on the edges before the core is well cooked through. So yeah, she says you boil the beans on a low heat, and then once they're ready, you put the diced potatoes in a saucepan and pour the beans over them. Now, it's the potatoes that go in the pan first and not the beans to avoid the beans sticking to the pan as you cook. You also want the heat to go through the sweet potatoes first to then get to the beans. So you pour the beans over the raw sweet potatoes, cover with the bean sauce, right? And then add to fire and cook until the sweet potatoes are soft and crumbly. Then you can then take them off, drain out the sauce, and then mash the two together until you get a uniform cake. Yeah, you have to drain all the water or you end up with a soggy meal. Always remember to put the sweet potatoes in first before the beans, and then once ready, you mash them together and then you have a meal ready to eat. So at that point, you can always take a slice, put it in the oven to warm it up, and then eat.
Omugoyo okusingira ddala bagufumba mu bijanjaalo. Bakozesa bijanjaalo ne lumonde. Abaganda balina kye bayita ebigaaga, omusoga aziyita mpande, zenva endala z'emmanyi ezifumba omugoyo. Era sitiiru nga guli ne lumonde, empande mu lusoga oba ebigaaga mu Luganda. Zenva ebbiri ze nali ndiddeko mu mugoyo, ze nali nfumbyeko. Era ndowooza ze gukola zokka kuba siwulirangayo kirala. Ebirala bye bafumba bibeera babiyita birala. Kasita bagoya oba muwogo oba bagoyeza ki ekirala, ogwo teguba mugoyo. Mugoyo bibeera bigaaga oba empande oba ebijanjaalo.
So I also asked her what other forms it could be prepared in. So besides your sweet potatoes and beans, is there anything else that could be used to prepare the same kind of cake? And she said it was basically sweet potatoes and beans, although in some rare cases there was something called mpande in Lusoga. I think they're what we call bambara nuts. Yeah, they're called mpande. I think she also said Baganda call it a bigaga. Yeah, but Runyankore, it's called still impande. Yeah. So it's beans and impande with sweet potatoes. Those are the only two forms she has prepared mugoyo in.
Mugoyo tegwaliko nti mugulya lunaku luno oba luli, era paka kati teguliiko nti mulina gulya ddi. Omugoyo ogufumba n'ogulya buli lw'owulira ng'oyagala. Teguliiko lunaku, terina si mmiiru nti oba bagifumba ku mukolo bwe guti oba bwe guti, ogifumba w'owulira ng'ogwagala ogulya, kubanga era si y'emmere eri awo nti omuntu yenna atasobola gifuna oba girya kugifumba. Emmere esinga obwangu nti ofumba lumonde, n'ofumba ebijanjaalo n'obisotta n'ojjula n'olya. Omugoyo ogw'edda yalinga mmere etakaluubiriza ddala, nti walinga osobola ogifumba n'ogiryako ennaku nga 3, ng'ate bw'oba oyagala ogikuuma ng'ebuguma ng'ogikuuma ebuguma. oba oyagala ogiriirawo naye ebeera teyonoonese kasita obeera ng'omanyi ogifumba n'ogitereka. Kubanga twagifumbanga nga omugoyo bw'omala ogufumba, omugoyo olina okuba ng'omanyi ogufumba. Si buli omu ndowooza nti amanyi ogufumba. Naye ab'edda baafunanga olulagala olufumbyeko ne baguteekamu ne bongerako olulagala olulala ne baguvumbika mu kyoto, nga baguvumbika ne baguteekako omuliro n'evvu. Bwe baba balya batuusa okulya nga bajjayo nga bagusala busazi na kaso nga bw'onoosala omugaati ogutali sliced. Mwe mulyako mwe muba temugumazeewo ne muddamu ne muguvumbika ne mugulya enkya. Yalinga mmere nnungi nga ne bw'oba otambula olugendo, ab'edda bye baatambulanga oba kulamaga ng'otambula n'emmere yo nga ne bwe ziba nnaku 3 ng'ogirya ekyali nnamu kasita obeera ng'ogiterese bulungi.
When I asked if there were any special occasions that warranted the preparation of mugoyo or any other cases, she said it wasn't the case. It was a convenient meal because all it required were 2 ingredients, the beans and the sweet potatoes, which were always readily available. But besides that, it was convenient for the fact that it could be eaten over a long period of time, say 2 to 3 days, yeah? As long as you knew how to keep it fresh well, as long as you knew how to prepare it well and then keep it as well warm and in a very safe place, you were guaranteed to have a meal for as long as possible, because when it's prepared and the mash is ready, it takes the form of a mushy cake. So you take a slice and put the rest back. Take a slice, put the rest back. Also, I guess the fact that these two are mashed together with no lumps left. I don't know how the science works, but it makes it a little harder to go bad, because sweet potatoes go bad by getting sticky and beans by taking in external air that then reacts with the sauce. But when put together, they form a take a cake-like form. So you simply take slices and put the rest back in storage. You can keep it cold, you can keep it warm, but either way you can have it and enjoy it very well. I think I remember always having black tea with it, and it was absolutely delicious. So yeah, she asserted that there was no special occasions for which mugoyo was made, but it was a meal of convenience, a meal that was easy to make and easy to serve and easy to store.
Thank you, Mark and Jonathan, for sharing these wonderful stories. Jonathan is a graphic designer and a published author whose book that is titled The Food That Grew Us, a Ugandan Local Food Showcase, can be found on Amazon. In fact, I will leave a link to the book in the episode notes, so be sure to check it out. This book is especially a treasure for people who are interested in Ugandan food. Remember, if you have a delicious food story that you'd like to share, you can reach out to me via email at akitcheninuganda@gmail.com or on Instagram at akitcheninuganda. Don't forget to share the podcast with others, to leave a review or a rating, and to comment on your favorite stories wherever you listen. See you in the next episode.